Sometimes the customer demands to speak to the manager, and they get exactly what they asked for, just not in the way they expected. Hello and welcome back to Karma Stories. I'm Rob and I hope you are having a wonderful day today. Today we have some misguided commands from management in a packed restaurant and a software team that learns the hard way what happens when you tell your QA analyst to just stop logging the small stuff. On to the stories, let's jump right in. Our first story today comes to us from Great Palpatine. I am the highest authority. One day, I'm working retail in my store. Now, what you need to know is that in my profession, there are three broad groups of products. One, the lowest tier, Tier A, is almost completely unregulated. These can be bought nearly everywhere. Second, the mid-tier, Tier B, can only be supplied by my boss. And third, the highest tier, Tier C, you need to get in writing before my boss can supply it to you. Now, a bit more about the Tier B products, which is important for this particular customer. Normally, when my boss is around, I can supply the Tier B products. Without my boss, we can still supply Tier B products, but we need to call someone from HQ to confirm this. Tier C products simply cannot be supplied without my boss being around, regardless of whether you have them in writing or not. But on this lovely day, my boss has to attend to something, and she's not around the whole day. I am holding the fort with the Tier A and B products, but as you can imagine, it's a lot more inconvenient now that I need to make multiple calls to HQ to be able to dispense the Tier B products. The queues are backing up, and it's just me and several other colleagues managing the store. My colleagues are focusing on selling the Tier A products. They can, in theory, handle the Tier B products, but they would really rather not to, and it's much better that I handle them. There's a whole story there about the Tier A and B products, but they don't belong in this story. So this customer comes waltzing in and wants to get a Tier C product. I tell her that I can't sell it to her, not today. But I always get it here. I'm sorry, I can't sell it to you, and my boss is not around today. But I see that you can sell Tier B products. Sorry, Tier B products are different. You want a Tier C product. To sell it to you, we need someone of a higher authority. Okay, bring me to the highest authority in the store. They're always behind that counter. Points to boss's counter. Well, I guess this conversation isn't going anywhere, and seeing is believing. Sure, madam. Okay, I will comply and bring you the highest authority in the store. Both of us head over to the counter, and I step behind it. Of course, I know him, he's me. Hello, madam, I am the highest authority in the store right now, as my boss is away. I'm sorry, but I cannot supply you with what you want today. Could you try again tomorrow when my boss is back? The lady looks confused, and then finally I see her connect the dots. Her expression changes to one of frustration as she walks away and doesn't come back. No, not even the next day. Boss is super amused when I tell her what happened the next day. There is a lot of speculation in the comments for this story about what these products are, and a lot of people seem to think they might be from a pharmacy. We have a comment from a user called NotMyUsername42 that says, sounds like a pharmacy maybe. There is a similar tier system in Australia. Tier C is not even supplied in my town as they don't have permissions or security to store it. Another commenter below that called FuyoBC said, that was my thinking. A, off the shelf over the counter. B, can be sold by the general staff if the pharmacist in charge gives the okay. C, you need a doctor's prescription. Another commenter down below called Musquerier said, this sounds like a pharmacy to me. If I'm correct, why is your boss allowed to leave at all? In the Netherlands, you can't even open without the pharmacist being there. OP responded to this one and confirmed what everybody was thinking. It says, absolutely correct. The reason why we are allowed to open is that where I'm from, we operate as a normal retail outlet when the pharmacist is not in. The pharmacy is fundamentally separate, physically and operationally from the rest of the store. It's confusing because the way that apothecaries operate around the world are fundamentally different. Where I'm from, it is allowed to even dispose Tier B products without a pharmacist physically present, thus the calls to HQ. Tier A products can be sold to everyone, there aren't any regulations on this. I've got to focus on the part of this one where they walked behind the counter and then told the lady that they were the highest authority in the store at that time. Oh, story time. When my wife and I used to run our convenience store, which we had for a few years, many years ago, I was quite young at the time. I was about 25 when we had that store and I owned it. But people didn't understand that when they came in. Because I was so young behind the counter, they thought that I was just somebody who worked there and not the owner of the store. So one day I had a really angry guy come in, and I can't remember what it was about at this point, but he was fuming, like flames coming out of his ears and his nose, and well, okay, that's pushing it a little bit, but you know what I mean. And he asked to speak to the owner. Well, he'd been a bit of a pain in the butt, so I took a step back from the counter, walked in a little bit of a circle right back to the counter and said, "Hi, I'm the owner. How can I help you today?" I do still remember the look on his face. He just turned around and walked out the door. It was one of my best moments of owning the convenience store. All it took was one stubborn manager, one annoyed customer, and one simple rule for everything to start unraveling at the drive-thru window. This story comes to us from Aurora Plays. I got my manager yelled at by a customer over his dumb rules. Obligatory first-time poster and all that. To understand what happened, you first need to understand two people, Susan and Jack. See, I used to work part-time at a burger joint that has a drive-thru, and I was often the one at the window. Susan was a regular customer, and everyone there had an opinion about her. She's very particular, has a tendency to snap at you if you don't do it just right the first time without being asked. I was her favorite employee though, because I would always take the time to chat with her if we weren't busy. She was actually quite pleasant once you got to know her, just a bit prickly. Now for Jack. He was the new GM, brought in to fix the restaurant. Now, I don't think there was anything that needed fixing, but the owner disagreed. He was originally meant to be the assistant GM, but then the owner fired our old GM and Jack was put in charge. He was a piece of work, the kind of manager you don't want to have. My favorite Jack moment was when he pulled all the staff on shift into the back while we were still open to lecture us on not smiling enough. You know the type of manager. On to the story. Now, one thing we had to do in the drive-thru is put a numbered sticker on the car's side mirror. This sticker was used by the runners who took food out to identify the car, so it's very important. Susan, however, didn't like having the sticker on her mirror. She was convinced she would get in an accident if the mirror was covered even a little, and always insisted on having it put on the car door instead. This wasn't out of the ordinary. We put stickers on doors all the time when we couldn't reach the mirror. However, Jack decided he wasn't having it and made a new rule that we could only put stickers on mirrors. I figured, okay, but if the customer asks for it, it should be fine, right? Wrong. I got chewed out for putting the sticker on Susan's car door. I tried to explain to Jack why I did it, but he wouldn't listen. Eventually, he just huffed at me and said, "Look, you need to put the stickers on the mirror, not on the door. No exceptions." Well, fine then. Cue Malicious Compliance. The next time Susan came in, I put the sticker on her mirror as ordered. She was confused, as I always put it on her door without being asked, and snapped, "What are you doing? Don't put it there. I'll get into an accident." I explained to her the new rule and that my hands were tied. I didn't want to get in trouble after all. Then I told her that it was Jack's rule. I didn't get to witness the next part directly, unfortunately. However, I heard about it secondhand from my coworkers. Apparently, when one of the runners brought her food out, she stopped them and asked them to grab Jack. She then proceeded to give Jack the butt chewing of a lifetime about his dumb rule. One particular quote that was relayed to me was, "What point is there to force them to put it there? They can see it just fine on the door." My thoughts exactly, Susan. Anyway, the rule was later amended that customers could request for the sticker to be placed on their door. Sorry, it wasn't as dramatic as most posts on here, but I wanted to share my bit of compliance. Jumping down to the comments on this one, we have one from a user called Swampfish. It says, I wouldn't go to a restaurant that puts stickers on my car. Why not use a paper flyer under the wiper or a hang tag or something? Okay, first of all, I want to say that this malicious compliance is awesome because they pitted Karen against the incompetent boss, and it was so well planned out. Now, I can't say I've ever been somewhere that puts stickers on your car when they go through the drive-thru, but I think I can say that I love my car quite a bit, and I spend a lot of time keeping that car clean, and if somebody stuck something to my car when I went through a drive-thru, it'd probably be the last time I went through that drive-thru. I thought these days most of the fast food places had cameras outside that could log your license plate and whatnot. Wouldn't that be an easier way to do it? Log the license plate and just have it come up at the top of the receipt? Why put something on people's cars? So I know this one is going to be absolutely polarizing. If you're on YouTube, let me know in the comments down below whether you'd be okay with somebody sticking something to your car when you go through a drive-thru. When a restaurant manager issued a command during peak dinner rush, one overworked employee followed it to the letter, and the results were nothing short of a disaster. This story comes to us from DressMedium4644. You want bread? Okay, no one eats dinner then. I, 23 male, have worked for a certain colored crustacean for a year and a half now. I bounced around between positions until they stuck me as a backup, which for context means I finish the par list and make more of anything we run out of. It also makes you the baker. Now, this specific chain was well known for their biscuits. Like, I'd say most people just go there for them and not the actual food. So it's pretty common to hear a server yell, "down bread," on a half-hour schedule. Usually, I can keep up with the demand and my par list. But one day, our morning prep person dipped and I couldn't come in early due to something personal. So when I got there, it was a mess. No bread, no prep food, just chaos. I get things under control until the rush comes in. By that point, I'm swamped and I can't keep up with bread because the line needs food constantly made. I was in fact asking for assistance and wasn't given any. I got so behind on bread that our manager on duty comes to the back and tells me, "Whatever you're doing for the line, stop, make the biscuits and nothing else for the rest of the night." Cue malicious compliance. I tell our line that I can't help them anymore and that they're on their own. I begin cranking out biscuits like a machine while the line struggles to keep up with the orders. It gets so bad that the same manager comes back and asks why we have 40+ minute tickets and no food has gone out. They calmly tell him it's because they have me making bread and not getting them the materials they need. The manager asks me why I'm not doing my job, and I explain that I'm only following his orders and only focusing on the bread. I think we had like 6 tables leave because their food was taking over an hour to get to them. Food went out cold, made incorrectly, missing components, the works. All because they made me focus on making the biscuits. I got called into our GM's office the next day to explain what happened and why our sales were so bad. I happily explained what the manager told me and walked out scot-free. About a month later, all backups have a baker, and if a morning prep person cannot come in, the managers are responsible until the backup can arrive. Jumping down to the comments on this one, we have one from a user called "Comments Are Nice Too." It says, "As they should be. Any manager worth their salt is going to pitch in whenever they're needed." Another commenter down below called "An Old IT Guy" said, "Nothing bothers me more than a manager who is unwilling to step up and help out when circumstances warrant. Your manager is not very good at his job, and then tried to throw you under the bus for not doing the impossible." I've had a few jobs just like this where the manager just wants to sit in their office all day, and they don't take any responsibility when things just go to crap. It's all the workers' problem, it's not the manager's problem at all, when they really should have been getting off their butt, getting out there, and helping out themselves. It is very true. A good manager is somebody who will step up and help out and get the job done. They lead by example, not sitting in an office. One manager thought demanding written approval for everything would get them more control, but it ended up bringing the entire office to a standstill. This story comes to us from Lewis Allen. You want it in writing? You got it. A few years back, I was working in a small office where I basically did a bit of admin work, customer service, scheduling, you name it. I was kind of the unofficial catch-all employee. My manager loved being in control, but would never actually take responsibility when things went sideways. One day, one of our longtime clients called in and asked to reschedule a major service appointment. They were super reliable, always paid on time, and honestly, just easy to work with. I looked at the schedule and saw that with a bit of rearranging, we could make their new time work just fine. So I went ahead and made the change. Done and dusted. Later that day, the manager stormed into my office like she had just caught me stealing company secrets. She asked if I rescheduled the said client without her approval. I affirmed and told her I've done that in the past. She then said from then on, I was not to make any schedule change without written approval from her. Email me every time. I want it in writing. Those were her words. Okay then, if that's what she wanted, I could play that game. From that moment on, I emailed her for every single change, even the smallest, most routine stuff. Appointment time shifts, when someone came back from lunch late, if a client called in to confirm something, if a tech was running 10 minutes behind, it didn't matter. I sent it all. And I waited for her written approval every time. It didn't take long before things started to pile up. Clients were calling back wondering why their appointments hadn't been confirmed. Techs were waiting in the parking lot because I couldn't officially send them to the next job without her go-ahead. One poor guy waited 45 minutes because she didn't check her email all morning. After about 2 weeks of this nonsense, she came charging into my office, completely exasperated. She asked why I was blowing up her inbox with all of that. I simply told her I was just doing exactly what she asked. You said everything had to be in writing, so I'm making sure I have your approval before touching anything. She just stood there blinking, realizing she had created her own nightmare. Let's just say that little policy didn't last much longer. Jumping down to the comments on this one, we have one from a user called Sigwin. It says, I'm glad you no longer have to deal with that, but you should have asked her to send you an email so you could have her instructions in writing. Opie responded and said, this happened years ago. I didn't have the knowledge I have now. Another commenter down below called Never Drops In 57 said, I imagine it lasted about long enough to soothe her ego about not folding too soon. If she had the potential to grow into a good manager, she'd have admitted she was mistaken and fixed it on the spot. Opie responded and said, trust me, she didn't apologize, not even once. Sometimes you just want to look that manager in the eye and say, hey, this is the problem you caused because of what you told me to do, so now you need to fix it. And yes, I will take that in writing, because documentation is something we drive home here all the time. You need everything written down so that you can use it later when they try to screw you. A frustrated developer pushed back on a QA analyst's detailed bug reports, and management backed him up. But cutting corners has a way of catching up with you. This story comes to us from Harry Mason 02. You want me to stop logging bugs? Okay, but don't say I didn't warn you. Hi, longtime lurker, first time poster. This happened a couple years ago when I was working as a QA analyst for a mid-sized software development company. Thought some of you might enjoy it. I was part of a Scrum team working on a new feature for a large enterprise client. Our team was made up of the usual suspects, devs, a Scrum Master, a product owner, and myself as the sole QA. Now, I'm a pretty thorough tester. I take pride in not just finding bugs, but documenting them clearly with steps to reproduce, screenshots, logs, you name it. Some devs loved me for it, others not so much. One dev in particular, we'll call him Mike, really hated having bugs logged against his code. He had this passive-aggressive attitude, where any issue I found was user error or not a bug. The guy had a serious ego problem and believed his code was flawless. We were getting close to deadline and I was logging a lot of issues. Nothing catastrophic, but enough to warrant attention. Some were cosmetic, others were functional, but all were valid. Mike didn't like that I was slowing things down. During a sprint planning meeting, Mike went on a mini rant about how QA was bogging the team down with unnecessary bugs, and how we shouldn't waste time logging minor issues that don't block functionality. Surprisingly, the PO, who was also feeling the deadline pressure, sided with him. The decision was made. From now on, only log critical blocker issues. Everything else can be reported informally or ignored. I clarified. So, you want me to stop logging non-blocking bugs, even if they're reproducible? Exactly. Let's focus on shipping. You got it, boss. For the next 2 sprints, I only logged blockers, like the app crashes or data corruption level stuff. Everything else, I kept to myself. No documentation, no tickets, nada. The release went live and all heck broke loose. Users were finding buttons overlapping on mobile, broken tooltips, form validation failures, inconsistent date formats, slow load times on certain views. None of it was technically blocking, but it made the experience feel amateurish. Cue a very uncomfortable post-mortem with the client. The PO asked why none of these issues were found during QA. I just smiled and said, they were found, but per your instruction, I didn't log them. Silence. Mike tried to chime in, but the damage was done. Upper management got wind of the fiasco and mandated that all issues, regardless of severity, must be logged going forward. Mike was moved to a different team shortly after. Not just because of this, but it didn't help. And I got an apology and a thank you from the PO. Just like the last story, this one is the one that drives home you need documentation on everything. Boss tells you not to do something that is kind of a critical part of your job, get it in writing. So that when they come down on you later and say, why weren't you doing this? You're supposed to do this. You can actually show them, oh no, I was told not to. And it's not just your word against them. If you're able to produce an email from the boss saying that you were supposed to ignore that. You know, I honestly have no idea how some workplaces actually function after reading all these stories on malicious compliance over the years. There are way too many incompetent people out there. Alright, I think we'll end it there. If you enjoyed this episode, I encourage you to follow us on your favorite podcasting platform. And if you're on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button and drop a like on the video. It really does help us out. I thank you for watching and listening. I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.